Hey guys, tonight we ease under the heavy drapery of a Victorian bedroom where the only thing more oppressive than the insomnia is the weight of the feather mattress. Imagine it. The gas lamps have been snuffed. The grandfather clock is ticking with judgmental regularity, and you're lying stiff as a plank in your high-collared nightgown, wondering if sleep might finally grace you with its presence. It won't, not for a while anyway. You've already tried not thinking about your unpaid tailor's bill, the neighbor's loud horse, and the smell of boiled mutton still lingering from supper. But here you are, staring into the flickering shadows of the wallpaper, waiting for something, anything, to lull you into unconsciousness. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from and what time is it for you? Share your location and local time in the comments if you're still awake enough. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie beneath a thick counterpane, Victorian for blanket, that weighs slightly less than a cow, trying to recall which household manual advised keeping your feet slightly elevated but never crossed lest your blood confuse itself. You'd tried that, and also the recommended light supper no later than 6 p.m., which consisted of 3 dry biscuits and a glass of warm milk. Still wide awake. This was normal. Sleep in the 19th century was both expected and elusive. It was supposed to be a moral act, rest earned by clean living and a clear conscience. So of course, when you couldn't sleep, it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was a character flaw. Victorian etiquette manuals advised treating insomnia like one might treat impolite dinner, conversation, avoid drawing attention to it, and certainly don't confess it aloud. Sleep was meant to descend gently upon the good. If it didn't, well, perhaps you were thinking too much, or worse, too ambitiously. A soft breeze stirs the bed curtains, which you left half-parted, in the hope that fresh air might do what prayer and ginger root tea had failed to accomplish. Your mother once swore by rubbing warm salt between the toes before bed. Your sister tried sleeping with a damp flannel on her forehead. And your cousin, well, he claimed that if you counted from 1 to 1,000 and back, all while reciting psalms, you could trick the brain into boredom. Historians still argue whether Victorian insomnia was more prevalent than today's, or simply documented with more literary flourish. Letters, diaries, and doctors' journals are full of moonlit tossings and turnings, lamentations scribbled at 3 a.m. with ink blotted by candlelight. Medical texts of the era weren't much help. One advised vigorous brushing of the scalp with a stiff bristled brush until the nerves retire from their high state of alarm. Another prescribed moderate starvation to exhaust the body into sleep. There were also sleeping caps soaked in vinegar and bedtime sermons read aloud to oneself. Spiritual and acidic, you roll to your side and face the marble fireplace, cold now, though a few embers stubbornly pulse in the grate. The maid forgot to bank it properly. Again, you consider ringing the bell, then glance at the clock. 1:30. Too late to be decent. Too early to be forgiven. So you pull the counterpane tighter, fluff your horsehair pillow, and wonder if it's your mattress, your digestion, or perhaps the unholy combination of both. Then the coughing starts from down the hall, of course. Your aunt, who insists on leaving her window open in February to prevent brain heat. You contemplate whether it would be considered impolite or heroic to gently throw a boot at her door. Instead, you sigh and reach for the small glass bottle on your nightstand. Inside a modest splash of lavender water and a few leaves of steeped lettuce, your latest experiment in the eternal quest for rest. You sniff it. It smells faintly of salad and disappointment. Still, you take a sip, because in this Victorian house, on this moon-bright night, you, like everyone else, are chasing sleep with one hand and dignity with the other, and neither, it seems, is willing to come quietly. You're back under the counterpane, blinking up at the dim ceiling, the taste of warm lettuce tea still lingering faintly on your tongue, like an awkward herbal apology. Yes, warm lettuce. No honey, no mint. Just slightly boiled, vaguely wilting lettuce leaves left to steep in hot water and sipped with the solemn hope that it might lull you to sleep. It's not exactly chamomile. Victorians were deeply committed to the idea that nature, particularly soggy, overcooked nature, could fix what the modern world had broken. And sleep, being the most delicate of bodily functions, was thought to be especially responsive to vegetables that had been gently humiliated in boiling water. The warm lettuce cure didn't come out of nowhere. It had roots, quite literally, in folk remedies that associated lettuce with sedation. The ancient Greeks believed it cooled the blood. By the 19th century, Victorian homemakers were instructed by household manuals to prepare it like a tincture, a handful of romaine or butter lettuce, leaves heated until limp, then steeped like a sad tea bag. Some recipes called for a dash of sugar to mask the taste. Others advised against sweetening at all, warning that it would excite the humors. You take another sip. It tastes like something a rabbit would politely decline. And yet in the flickering candlelight, the ritual has its charm. You wrap your hands around the cup, warm and earthy, and breathe in steam that smells vaguely of garden beds after rain. You think about how many sleepless Victorians performed the same gesture, grasping for comfort in the most gentle, undramatic way possible. You picture a woman in Yorkshire, hunched in a shawl beside the stove, whispering over a saucepan of lettuce tea, or a clergyman in Bath, scribbling his final sermon lines while sipping it in bitter resignation. You're not alone in this leaf-based absurdity. Historians still argue whether the warm lettuce remedy worked at all, or whether it was simply the act of sipping something bland and warm in the dark that triggered relaxation. Maybe it was distraction. Maybe it was just placebo wrapped in Victorian manners. You lean back into your pillows, the cup still warm in your lap. Somewhere in the distance, a carriage wheel clicks over cobblestones. You imagine the driver as another sleepless soul, hoping the motion might tire his bones. Perhaps he too had tried lettuce and found it wanting. One popular 1870s pamphlet claimed that lettuce contains a mild opiate, not unlike that of the poppy. The science behind this, questionable. The confidence, utterly Victorian. More adventurous souls tried blending their lettuce with milk vinegar or fennel. One recipe recommends boiling the lettuce until it slumps with defeat, then adding barley water for fortitude. The resulting brew sounds less like a sleep aid and more like an existential crisis in a teacup. You glance at your half-finished cup. Slumped, yes. Defeated, definitely. Still, you can't help but feel a little soothed. Not because the lettuce is doing anything miraculous, but because this small, strange act connects you to centuries of restless people trying earnestly, gently to drift into sleep. It's different from today's solutions. No blue light filters, no guided meditation apps, no noise machines that play thunderstorms with suspicious regularity. Just you, some lettuce, and the slow, steady belief that sleep might come if you're just bland enough to deserve it. You set the cup down. Outside, a fox cries. Inside, the candle gutters casting shadows that dance like soft lettuce leaves across the wallpaper. You breathe, slowly, not expecting sleep, but not chasing it either, because in a world full of opiates and stimulants, the Victorians dared to believe that soggy lettuce and stillness might be enough, and maybe, just maybe, they were right. You blink awake, not because you slept, but because your eyelids gave up for a minute, and now the candles burned lower, leaving the room dimmer and the air thick with that curious waxy warmth that only happens in the dead of night. The lettuce tea didn't work. Again. So you do what any self-respecting Victorian insomniac would do. You reach for the laudanum. It's in a blue glass bottle with a tight cork and a faint smell that tickles your nose even before you unstopper it. You pour just a few drops into a spoon, amber slightly viscous, and let it sit there, glinting in the light, like something that ought to come with a confession. Victorian England loved its laudanum, a mix of opium and alcohol usually. In a syrupy tincture, it was the go-to remedy for just about everything: headaches, coughs, grief, digestion, hysteria, and of course, sleeplessness. And unlike the humble lettuce leaf laudanum, didn't ask for patience. It delivered results, with side effects, but results. You take the dose, just as countless others did, by candlelight in quiet desperation, with the air thick from fire and failure. You hold it on your tongue for a second, then swallow, trying not to wince. Historians still argue whether Victorians fully understood laudanum's addictive nature or simply chose to overlook it. Some doctors warned of its long-term dangers. Others dispensed it liberally to patients from every class and station. It was cheap, accessible, and came with a level of mystery that felt oddly medicinal. Famous authors, poets, and socialites were laudanum devotees. Elizabeth Barrett Browning sipped it before bed. Thomas de Quincey wrote entire essays about it, though not always in glowing terms. For them, it wasn't just a drug, it was part of their sleep ritual, a velvet-voiced usher to the world of dreams. You lie back against your pillows waiting. Not for euphoria, this dose is mild, but for that gentle curtain draw, that quiet, numbing comfort that says enough. Your fingers relax first, then your jaw, then your thoughts, just a little like a crowded ballroom, slowly clearing out as the violins soften. A flicker of guilt passes through your mind. Is this cheating? Is sleep? Still sleep if it's borrowed from a bottle, but the guilt fades quickly. The Victorians had no concept of sleep hygiene, no wellness influencers, no circadian rhythm apps. They had tired bodies, overworked nerves, and cabinets full of things that promised rest. So they took them, and you do too. Across the city, countless nightstands, hold similar bottles, half hidden, half honored. Mothers who can't quiet their racing minds. Clerks who've stared at ledger books all day. Tailors, poets, widows. People who dream of dreaming if only for a few hours. You exhale. It's easier now. The room feels like it's floating slightly. The air a little silkier, your thoughts a little kinder. You think of a woman in Bristol who once wrote to a friend, "I drank my 10 drops and dreamt I was a garden filled with vines and no door." You wonder if she ever found the door. You won't take more. You promise that to yourself as you set the bottle down gently, cork snug, spoon wiped. Tomorrow perhaps you'll try the lettuce again, or the vinegar foot bath, or counting to 1,000. But tonight it was the bottle, quiet and amber and a little too easy. And you don't feel bad about it, because here in this flickering Victorian bedroom, sleep isn't a virtue, it's a victory. The fire has faded to ash now, casting the faintest glow across the room, like the embers are too tired to sleep and too polite to say so. You're still awake floating, perhaps, but not quite gone. The laudanum softened the edges, but your limbs are stiff, and your pillow somehow feels like it's stuffed with regret and twigs. You sit up slightly and reach for another old standby warmth, not internal, not liquid. This is external, tangible. Victorian households, especially those with a touch of money, had entire systems for keeping sleepers warm. Because cold, they believed, was a gateway to all sorts of nocturnal woes, from nightmares to rheumatism to thoughts of emigration. First comes the flannel nightcap. Yes, that's a real thing. You tug it over your ears. It's itchy, slightly too tight, but effective. Victorians adored their flannel. They believed warmth around the head helped balance the body's inner fires, or at least kept them from escaping through your scalp. Next, you dig beneath the bed to retrieve a small object wrapped in rags, a heated brick, still warm from the kitchen hearth. You place it at your feet, careful not to burn your toes. It radiates a dull, comforting heat, more reliable than your uncle's political opinions, and significantly less loud. Victorian households used these brick stones in metal bottles for generations. Some filled with coals, others with boiled water wrapped in layers of cloth. Later came ceramic pigs and even glass cylinders. They were simple, effective, and prone to leaking if you were unlucky or slept like a tumbler in the night. You hear the faint hiss of warmth meeting fabric, a kind of whisper from the past. Then you reach for the pièce de résistance, your bed socks. Thick, hand-knitted, slightly mismatched one, patched in 3 places by someone who clearly loved you enough to extend your lifespan by keeping your toes intact. Victorians didn't joke about warmth. A cold bedroom wasn't just unpleasant, it was dangerous. Doctors recommended airing rooms during the day, but advised sealing every crack by sundown. Draft stoppers, window wraps, even keyhole plugs. You glance at your windows. Tightly drawn drapes, tacked cloth across the sill. There's even a rolled-up rug along the baseboard. Historians still argue whether this intense concern for warmth was based in genuine medical science or just Victorian paranoia layered in lace. Either way, their methods were elaborate and thorough, and oddly comforting. Your mattress groans as you shift, settling back under the weight of the feather-filled counterpane. its heaviness now a kind of promise, a pressure blanket from a century before the term existed. You breathe in the smell of old linen and singed brick. Somewhere a floorboard creaks. Not a ghost, just the house reminding you that it's still there, watching over you, holding in heat. You run your hand along the edge of the blanket and think of all the hands that have done the same, people layering on warmth like armor against the night, a brick at the feet, a flannel cap on the head, 3 layers between the mattress and their dreams. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked, and that's the real charm of these Victorian sleep rituals. They weren't stylish, they weren't streamlined, but they were filled with care, with intention, with the kind of gentle stubbornness that said, "Tonight I will sleep even if it takes an army of wool and steam." You close your eyes. The brick hums softly against your soul. The cap hugs your head like a sleepy hand. And though you're not asleep yet, you're closer. You are warm. You are wrapped. And the world, at least for now, feels still. You stir slightly as something tickles your nose. Not a breeze, but a scent. Faint sweet with a bite of sharpness underneath. For a moment you think it's the linen again. But no, it's something you arranged before trying the lettuce. A cloth infused with vinegar and lavender, tucked gently under your pillow. Because sometimes Victorians tried to smell their way to sleep. You reach for the sachet, now lifting it carefully. The vinegar has mellowed since earlier, the lavender now dominant. You inhale slowly. In the 1800s, the olfactory was a legitimate and often highly encouraged avenue for sleep. Not just because certain scents were thought to soothe, but because strong odors were believed to rebalance the humors, clear the head, or simply outcompete more troubling smells like chamber pots and city smoke. Popular among the remedies were crushed orange peels stuffed into small muslin pouches, not eaten, just sniffed. Peppermint, rosemary, and lavender joined the roster. Some households infused pillows with dried herbs. Others left open vials of floral oil by the bedside. And then there were smelling salts. Now you're probably imagining someone waving a harsh-smelling vial under a fainted lady's nose. But that wasn't the only use. Mild, diluted salts, ammonia, mixed with essential oils, were sometimes kept beside the bed and sniffed before lying down to induce calmness or, paradoxically, weariness. It's hard to say if it worked. Historians still argue whether this was more aromatherapy or placebo in a bottle, but the Victorians believed it deeply. You dab your sachet under your nose again. Lavender, a whiff of rose petal, maybe a note of, well, it could be lemon or old paper. Either way, it's not unpleasant. You're suddenly aware of how much effort has gone into making the air around your face just slightly more bearable. The windows are sealed, the fire has gone out, and you've created your own microclimate, a world of scent and warmth and intention. You glance across the room at the washstand. On it, a small bottle labeled Violet Sleep Water, a gift from a friend who swears by it. You tried it once and woke up feeling like you'd slept in a perfume shop, but in a kind way. Victorian chemists marketed dozens of these concoctions, waters, sprays, even powders, to dust on your pillow. Some included hints of belladonna. Others had valerian root patchouli or bergamot. Many came with printed instructions that read more like poetry than pharmacology. Breathe thrice, then rest your head. Let Blossom's kiss bring ease instead. You smile faintly, remembering the rhyme. You fluff your pillow and roll slightly, positioning the sachet nearer to your cheek. The cloth is cool against your temple. You breathe deeply again. A curious calm begins to bloom, not sleep, not yet, but something like it. A truce between your thoughts and your body. You imagine a boarding house in Brighton where 10 women share a room each, clutching a different herb-stuffed pouch. The air a strange bouquet of personal preferences. Or a lonely lighthouse keeper perfuming his bedding with pressed mint leaves from a crate meant for the mainland. They were all doing what you're doing, trying gently to sleep, not commanding it, not drugging it, just inviting it in with the lightest breath of lemon balm. The sachet slips slightly as you shift. You tuck it back under the pillow. The smell lingers. You close your eyes and listen to nothing but lavender. You open your eyes to the sound of ticking. Not loud, not even particularly fast, just relentless. A soft click every second, the mechanical heartbeat of your Victorian bedroom. The mantel clock, of course. A gift from someone who thought it might bring peace, structure, civility. It doesn't. It watches you. Tick, tick, tick. You lie there counting each beat. You've tried ignoring it, tried muffling it with a scarf once, but then you overslept and missed breakfast, and nothing is more frowned upon than a missed breakfast in a house where boiled eggs wait precisely 8 minutes before becoming unfit for society. The Victorians loved their clocks. Grandfather clocks in the hall carriage, clocks in the parlor, pocket, watches on chains, and in the bedroom, the sleep clock. Not to wake you, but to observe you. Silent, solemn, like a tiny brass butler with excellent timekeeping skills and zero empathy. You once read in a household magazine that sleeping near a timepiece helped align the rhythms of the body to the measured passage of the night. You're unconvinced. Still it ticks. Historians still argue whether Victorian obsession with time was a product of industrialization or simply an extension of their desire to be correct. Either way, time invaded everything, sleep included. You recall a doctor's pamphlet suggesting that one should retire at no later than the 11th hour and rise with the 6th. And if sleep did not come by the first half hour, one should rise, stretch walk the room thrice, and then try again as though anew. You did that twice. Now you're staring at the shadow of your own nose while the clock hisses its smug little ticks. There were more elaborate sleep monitors, too. Victorian sleep diaries often kept by the anxious and the aristocratic recorded minute details. Retired at 10:12. First yawn at 10:31. Heard owl at 11:06. Drowsy but unclaimed by slumber. One gentleman's diary included a nightly sketch of his own face with the caption, "Still waiting." You shift adjust the flannel nightcap. The clock ticks. There's even a model, rare, now mostly destroyed, that was designed to assist sleepers by chiming every hour to reassure them that time at least was still progressing. It was discontinued for being wildly counterproductive. You imagine being woken every hour just to be told you hadn't slept yet. How very Victorian. You sit up and walk softly across the room, your slippers whispering over the rug. You lift the clock and inspect it. Brass casing, glass face, little hands holding their secrets. You turn it to face the wall. Progress. Back in bed, the room feels a little quieter, a little less observed. You close your eyes and try to remember life before the clock, when darkness stretched unmeasured, when night was simply night, not broken into numbers. You imagine a farmhouse with no mantel clock, just the wind and the stove cooling, and the sound of sheep breathing through the floorboards. A slower world, not better, just softer. Your breath slows, your limbs loosen, and the ticking still there, still marching, feels further away now, as though time too is willing to turn its face from you. Just for a while, you rise slowly, wrapping your dressing gown around your shoulders like a resignation. The room is too familiar now, clock-faced, and lettuce-scented, flannel-layered, and faintly judging. There's only one thing left to try. You step into the hallway. Your slippers whisper along the floorboards, the hem of your nightgown brushing against cool wood. You pass portraits of ancestors who look like they haven't slept in decades. Their painted eyes follow you, puzzled but not surprised. After all, it's the middle of the night, and you're about to do something very Victorian and very odd. You're going out for a walk. Midnight strolls weren't a sign of madness. Back then, they were therapeutic. Fresh air, even fog-heavy, and laced with coal smoke, was believed to rebalance the bodily rhythms. Physicians in the 1870s prescribed air therapy with remarkable confidence, encouraging gentle movement under moonlight, preferably without speaking, eating, or overthinking. You descend the narrow stairs with care. Skipping the third one, it creaks like a scolded goose. Outside, the gas lamps flicker like half-hearted fireflies. You pull your shawl tighter and begin to walk. The air is brisk and slightly damp, carrying hints of horse manure, chimney soot, and whatever the fishmonger dropped earlier that day. But it is air, and it is not inside. The fog curls around your ankles like a cat unsure if it likes you. It softens the edges of everything, the railings, the corners, even your own thoughts. Historians still debate whether these walks helped in anyone's sleep or simply gave them something to do with their restlessness. Some believe it was more about not being in bed, a kind of reverse psychology for the Victorian brain. Others argue it gave insomniacs a brief illusion of control, of choosing to wander rather than being exiled from slumber. You pass a lamplighter heading home. He nods without surprise. He's seen you or people like you many times. You stop beside a shuttered bakery. The warmth is long gone, but a faint yeasty sweetness still clings to the stones. You breathe in, deeply. 2 houses down, a black cat blinks at you from atop a railing. It does not move. Neither do you. You think about the countless others who've done this exact thing. Men in top hats and nightshirts. Women in woolen wraps, their fingers clutching handkerchiefs they've cried into and dried again. Some walked alone, some in pairs. Some simply leaned against lampposts, waiting to feel tired enough to return. You imagine one man counting bricks, another following the faint sound of waves. A young woman mapping constellations through coal haze. A child pretending they're in a dream because being outside at night must mean something magical is about to happen. You smile at that, and then slowly your legs begin to feel heavier, not unpleasantly, just weighted, as if your limbs are finally remembering the promise of rest. You retrace your steps. the fog now resting lightly on your shoulders. The door creaks as you open it, then settles. The stairs welcome your return without protest. Back in your room, the candle has nearly wept itself out. The brick at your feet is cool, but the bed looks softer now, less like a battlefield, more like a refuge. You slip beneath the covers. No clock tick, no vinegar cloth, only your breath and the faint memory of lamplight. You don't expect sleep, but this time you're willing to let it find you whenever it likes. The covers greet you like an old friend, slightly lumpy, faintly musty, but warm in the right places. You wriggle down into their folds, grateful for the way your muscles now feel gently reluctant instead of outright rebellious. The walk helped, or the air helped, or maybe just the getting up and doing something helped. You lie still, and then it begins again, the rustle, the itch, the press of too many thoughts behind your eyes. So you open them, this time not to reach for lettuce tea or laudanum, not even to walk, but to adjust the bed itself, specifically the curtains. Victorian beds were often enclosed by heavy tasseled drapes designed to keep out cold light and ghosts depending on who you asked. You sit up slowly, grasp the curtain, and pull it fully closed. The effect is immediate. A muffled hush settles over your little world. The air goes still, almost sacred. You are now cocooned in your own velvet tent of denial. But is it helping? Victorian physicians were deeply divided on the subject of bed curtains. Some believed they trapped used air, encouraging weak lungs and weak morals. Others insisted they preserved warmth and prevented drafts, which in the Victorian imagination were responsible for everything from sniffles to spiritual despair. Historians still argue whether bed curtains served more psychological or practical purposes. Privacy was a luxury in most households, and a curtained bed might be the only space in which one could truly vanish. You draw your knees up, resting them like bookends under the blanket, and glance around at your new enclosure. Shadowy folds, candlelight just a whisper on the fabric. Everything suddenly feels closer, but quieter. You shift your pillow. There's a bump in it, a rogue feather probably. You poke it down with the decisiveness of someone pretending to be in control. Then a new thought surfaces. What if too much enclosure is the problem? Some Victorians thought so. Entire debates were had in medical journals about the health risks of sleeping in stale environments. One doctor recommended opening a small slit in the curtains near the head to let in a finger's width of pure night. You do that now, pinching back a corner with a safety pin from your dressing gown pocket. Immediately, a chill dances in and brushes your face like a teasing ghost. But it feels refreshing, a compromise. And that perhaps is the unspoken truth of Victorian insomnia. It was full of compromises. Should the window be open or shut? Should your mattress be firm or feathered? Is it better to sleep on your back to avoid nightmares, or on your side to ease digestion? The Victorians didn't know, but they wrote about it, argued about it, measured it. They tried earnestly, awkwardly, beautifully, to turn sleep into something one could curate, coax, manage. You lie back again inside your curtain-dimmed world, letting the faint slice of air keep you company. You wonder how many people long ago fell asleep, trying to decide if they should leave their curtains open or closed. You hope it was all of them, because if nothing else, it's nice to think that indecision might sometimes be the thing that finally wears you out. The curtain rustles faintly beside your ear, that narrow slit, still letting in a whisper of night air. It's easier to breathe now, but your eyes remain open. You've tried tea heat scent walks and architecture. Time to try money. Because in Victorian England, if you were wealthy enough or desperate enough, you could hire help for your insomnia. Meet the nap coach. You blink at the ceiling, remembering an article from the Ladies' Companion, to Healthful Repose, a real title, by the way. It spoke glowingly of the benefits of professional rest consultants. Men and women, usually of genteel background, hired to observe your habits, critique your bedroom setup, and suggest corrective rituals for nocturnal tranquility. In other words, people who got paid to watch you sleep and comment on your curtains. You imagine it now. A neatly dressed woman in stiff lace gloves, sitting in the corner, notebook in hand, whispering. Your breathing is irregular. Have you considered stewing radishes before dusk? Nap coaches advised on everything: your bedding layers, your dietary intake, even your pillow plumpness. One particularly famous coach in London claimed to cure a duchess's lifelong insomnia by having her rotate pillows hourly and recite lists of river names between each flip. Historians still argue whether these sleep advisors were genuinely effective or simply the era's polite version of snake oil salesmen. What's known is that their services were expensive, exclusive, and occasionally soothing. Some brought props, herbal sachets, metronomes, even miniature harps played at the foot of the bed. Others offered verbal bedtime scripts, essentially customized lullabies mixed with affirmations like, "You are warm, you are wealthy, you are not thinking about taxes." You shift on your mattress, picturing a small man in spectacles tapping your shoulder to tell you your head is angled poorly. You'd pay him to stop. Maybe that's part of the trick. Scandals did erupt. In 1878, a popular coach named Miss Barrel was discovered to have reused pillow scripts and overcharged for dream alignment sessions. A pamphlet titled The Somnolent Swindle was published, featuring diagrams of overpriced linen arrangements and a checklist of symptoms caused by too much suggestion. Still, many clients swore by their coaches. One wrote, "It was not her knowledge, but her presence that calmed my nerves." Another said, "I never slept better than under the mild judgment of a woman who looked like she might correct my punctuation in her sleep." You smile at the idea. Perhaps in their own way, these sleep consultants weren't far off from the soft-voiced narrators of modern sleep podcasts. Not doctors, not therapists, just someone there to say it's okay. Try again. I'll be here until you doze. You roll to your side, imagining a voice not too stern, not too sweet, reminding you to slow your breathing, to ease your grip on the day, to let go of perfect sleep and settle for a pleasant drift. The imaginary coach tucks your blanket more snugly under your chin. She doesn't ask for payment. She doesn't promise dreams. She just nods and waits. You close your eyes. For once it feels like the room is waiting with you, not against you. You stir sometime later, not fully awake, not fully dreaming, just floating between like a feather caught in the soft draft under the door. A faint sound reaches you. Paper. Rustling. You sit up slightly and realize what it is: your own letterbox. Or rather, the small wooden tray you placed beside your bed filled with pamphlets, clippings, and one very creased envelope. Because tonight, in the flickering glow of your final candle stub, you're going to read what the Victorians wrote to each other about their sleep or lack thereof. It's time to meet the members of the sleep societies. These groups sprang up quietly across Britain during the late 19th century, half medical, half social, half philosophical. Yes, that's three halves, but this is Victorian math. They were organizations that shared theories, remedies, and mutual commiseration about the peculiar plight of sleeplessness. You unfold a copy of the monthly slumber circular, printed in thick blot-prone ink, its opening line reading, "We the weary gather now to share our softest failures." Already it's oddly comforting. There's a section titled Sleep Correspondence, real letters from members all over England, and even a few from across the Channel. Some are poetic, some are cranky. One reads, "Dear Society, I have tried the barley wrap. My feet rebelled. Kindly advise." Another, "To my fellow sleepless, I find counting chimney pots backwards produces mild dizziness." Is this progress? You chuckle softly. These weren't scientists or doctors. They were people, real tired people. Housewives in Norwich, postmen in Manchester, grocers in Cardiff, writing about their midnight rituals, their pillow complaints, their fears that maybe sleep was simply a myth invented by the well-rested. Historians still argue whether these societies were true medical collectives or merely support groups in disguise. But their letters have survived tucked in archives, bound in amateur journals, or left in trunks by people who knew the quiet value of being heard. You run your fingers along a reply addressed to Miss A. M. York. "My dear Miss A., I have enclosed a sachet of dried lemon verbena and instructions for a pine cone warming box. May your rest be light and unbothered." It's signed "Only yours in waiting." You imagine Miss A. reading that by oil lamp, clutching the letter like a lifeline in the fog. And maybe, just maybe, that night she slept better, not because of the pine cone, but because someone had written to her as though rest was still possible. You fold the letter carefully and place it beside your pillow. Tonight your room feels less lonely, less defeated. There's something about reading the words of people who tried everything and still made time to write letters, hopeful, humorous, stubbornly gentle letters. It reminds you that sleeplessness has never been a solo act. It's a quiet community, and tonight you're part of it. You lie back, the old letters still rustling faintly beside you, their ink-smudged sympathy seeping into the edges of your thoughts. That last line, "May your rest be light and unbothered," echoes like a lullaby, whispered by someone who's been exactly where you are. Your stomach growls. Of course it does. You didn't eat much at dinner. Just bread, a little fish paste, and an obligatory boiled carrot. Victorian etiquette discouraged heavy suppers. Too much digestion, they believed, would rouse the nerves and fuel unruly dreams. But too little, and you'd be up all night dreaming about roasted chestnuts and treacle pudding. You consider sneaking down to the kitchen, but instead reach for the tin of sleep biscuits on your nightstand. They crumble like dust and taste vaguely of chalk and regret, but they're better than nothing. Victorian sleep diets were earnest and odd. Doctors wrote long-winded pamphlets about how to prepare the stomach for nocturnal stillness. Some recommended a cleansing broth 2 hours before bed. Others swore by barley water or a nutritive thimbleful of egg custard. A few even championed nothing but hot water and prayer. And then, of course, there was lettuce again. But not in tea, this time boiled with milk and nutmeg and eaten like porridge. Historians still debate whether these food regimens actually helped sleep or just created a soothing bedtime routine. What's clear is that the Victorians deeply believed that calm intestines equaled calm dreams. There were even recipes for sleeping gruel, a slow-cooked oat dish designed to be bland enough to bore your body into submission. You eye the last biscuit. It's hard as a rock. Probably best saved in case you need to hammer something. One curious dietary theory of the 1880s claimed that eating too much brain food, like meat onions or exotic spices, would overstimulate the intellect and delay sleep. One health columnist advised readers to consume foods befitting the dreams you wish to have, which raises the question, what do warm oats dream about? Probably a nap. You pour yourself a little water, lukewarm now, and sip carefully. Hydration is important, but not too much. Another Victorian theory warned of bladder unrest, disturbing one's REM cycles long before anyone knew what REM was. As you settle back in your stomach pleasantly full of crumbs and moral superiority, you think about how seriously they took it all, every sip, every swallow, as if the path to sleep was paved with restraint routine and exactly the right texture of bread crust. You picture a family seated in silence, chewing tiny portions of milk toast while the grandfather clock chimes 9. Eat slowly, dear, it's almost dreaming time. The fire dims. Plates are cleared, the lettuce is steeped, and someone somewhere drifts into sleep with a stomach just bland enough to be peaceful. You exhale, setting the empty tin back in its drawer. Not too full, not too hungry, just right. Just calm, because even if you don't believe in sleep diets, there's comfort in the quiet logic of them, in knowing that someone thought the softness of oats or the stillness of a biscuit might carry you gently across the edge into sleep. And tonight maybe it will. The mattress creaks as you roll onto your other side. Not from discomfort exactly, just curiosity. It's lumpy in a new way over here. You reach behind you and feel something wiry. Not a spring, no. Something far more Victorian. Horsehair. Yes, you remember now. This mattress, stubborn, scratchy, and surprisingly heavy, was stuffed not with feathers or foam, but with the coarse, cleaned hair of actual horses. A superior fill, the label said. Ideal for breathability and moral posture. You're beginning to see why Victorians were always so grumpy. Victorian mattresses were nothing if not diverse. You could sleep on horsehair, straw, sea moss, lamb's wool, or if you had wealth, actual feathers from specially selected geese. Each came with its own promise of spinal alignment, humoral balance, and cleanliness. You sit up briefly and pat the bed like an old dog. Lumpy, yes, but faithful. Some households layered their mattresses. Straw base, wool top, maybe a quilted feather overlay, all wrapped in ticking cloth and stitched so tightly you'd think the whole thing was a prisoner being prepared for transport. Historians still argue whether any one type of Victorian mattress offered better sleep than the rest. Diaries from the time are filled with complaints. The straw pokes again tonight, or woke on the edge. Suspect feathers have migrated. Yet few seem to question the idea that good sleep was more about discipline than comfort. You flop back and stare at the ceiling. It's just out of focus enough that you can pretend it's a cloud or a very large judgmental quilt. Some inventors, of course, tried to fix the mattress problem. There were pneumatic mattresses, early prototypes of air beds that leaked at 3 a.m. There were spring mattresses that groaned louder than floorboards. One eccentric baron even designed a clockwork bed that tilted a sleeper slowly upright at dawn. It worked. Once, you reach down and press into the mattress again, firm in some places, suspiciously soft in others, like an untrustworthy friend. Victorians recommended flipping mattresses monthly. You've done it twice in the past year. Once because you dropped your reading candle, once because you were chasing a rogue beetle. There were also mattress refreshing powders, usually baking soda mixed with lavender, meant to keep odors at bay and inspire respiratory calm. You think there might still be some caught in the seams, or maybe that's just leftover sleep biscuit. One popular sleep treatise advised testing the mattress by lying in multiple directions before settling. You try that now, head to foot, diagonally, even curled sideways like a cat. It's still lumpy, but now it's your lump, and somehow that's enough. You picture an old house on a cliff edge, the wind howling outside, while a girl in flannel pajamas adjusts and readjusts the horsehair mattress beneath her. Her mother says, "Be grateful it's softer than moss." And perhaps it was, because the truth is, these strange, uncomfortable beds, patched overstuffed, underfluffed, held centuries of tired people who somehow, despite everything, still managed to fall asleep. Eventually, you burrow deeper, the horsehair creaking faintly beneath you. It's not perfect, but it's holding you, and for now, that's all you need. The mattress beneath you sighs like it's finally decided to cooperate just a little. You wiggle your toes at the edge of the blanket, now more accustomed to the uneven density of horsehair and sleep biscuit crumbs. Your body is relaxed, your mind less so. So you try something else, something the Victorians once swore by. You try hypnosis. No, not the dramatic spiraling eyes and ticking pocket watches of stage shows. We're talking about the quiet, medicalized kind, the type recommended by certain 19th century physicians for cases of stubborn sleeplessness, or what one called minds too stubborn to lie still. You place your hands lightly on your stomach as instructed in a manual you found once, and breathe slowly. In, out. Imagine you are a blank page. Imagine someone gently writing sleep across you in the faintest ink. This was the kind of imagery Victorian hypnotists liked to use: soft metaphors, repeated phrases, rhythmic tones. One practitioner referred to his sessions as verbal embroidery. He never touched his patients, just spoke to them slowly, with intent. You mimic that now, whispering internally in the voice of a very patient man with a large mustache and zero expectations. You are floating. You are soothed. You are as quiet as wallpaper. It's hard not to laugh a little, but you keep going. Hypnosis, or mesmeric suggestion, as it was sometimes called, rose to popularity among both the desperate and the fashionable. People believed it could cure nervous disorders, bad habits, digestive issues, and of course, insomnia. Historians still argue whether it actually worked or simply gave restless minds something rhythmic to focus on. Either way, it gave Victorians permission to stop trying so hard, because the secret they believed was not falling asleep. It was being available for sleep to fall upon you. You lie still, eyes closed, breathing steady. You are not inviting sleep. You are a chaise longue awaiting a weary ghost. Some hypnotists even made house calls. Imagine it, a stranger entering your parlor, bowing, then instructing you to sit still while he tells you that your eyelids are heavy and your arms are full of clouds. One woman in Kent claimed her sleep improved drastically after 3 sessions. Or maybe she just got bored of pretending it wasn't working. Others took the art further, writing entire sleep scripts to be read aloud by spouses or trusted servants. They included phrases like, "Sink, my dear, like the tide at dusk. Let your breath and mind forget who's who. Let go, let go, let go." You repeat that now, not aloud, just internally. Let go, let go, let go. It sounds silly. It also feels a little nice. Your breath evens out. The mattress groans once more, less judgmentally this time. You begin to imagine someone sitting at the edge of the bed, not watching, not expecting, just suggesting you stop holding on so tightly. And maybe that's the core of it, the permission to stop trying. Not to win sleep, but to stop competing with it. You exhale again, slower this time. Let go, let go, let go. Your body is still, your eyes half lidded. You're balanced on the thin thread between awareness and dream, where everything starts to feel a little floaty. If you blink too hard, you'll start over. But if you let it be, you might just drift. And then faintly, there it is, a hum. You sit up slightly, eyes narrowing toward the corner of the room. It's not coming from outside, nor from within your own ears, though that's always a possibility in the Victorian age, with its endless catalogs of unexplained ailments. No, this is mechanical. The musical pillow. You'd nearly forgotten about it. A curious invention from the more whimsical side of Victorian sleep culture. Part gadget, part experiment, part desperate bedtime performance art. You tug the small wooden box from beneath the feather pillow. A simple turnkey music box sewn discreetly into the fabric and padded with velvet so as not to jab the sleeper in the ear. It hums a lullaby not quite in tune, but hauntingly close, like a child singing under their breath while playing with marbles. These musical pillows were a fleeting trend touted by sleep enthusiasts and novelty catalogs alike. Some played short waltzes, others featured hymns, and one infamous model was programmed to play the same 8 bars of Greensleeves until the spring unwound or the user finally hurled it across the room. You let the tune play. A few warbly notes, then the low tick of the gears turning beneath the fabric. It's oddly soothing, less like a concert and more like the sound of something trying very hard to comfort you. Historians still argue whether these musical devices were actually effective or merely fashionable distractions. One popular theory suggests that they worked by syncing the body's rhythms to an external predictable sound. Others suggest that it gave anxious minds something soft and repetitive to latch onto like a lullaby that doesn't expect applause. Some models were elaborate. There was the harpsichord cushion, an absurd contraption with strings beneath the stuffing that plucked gently when pressure was applied. It was beautiful, useless, and lasted all of 2 seasons before being deemed too intense for restful minds. You shift your weight, letting the box hum closer to your ear. There were also bedside song bells, little hand cranked players that sat near your nightstand and emitted delicate tinkling versions of popular tunes. One London magazine called them a mechanical shepherd, guiding thoughts gently to pasture. Yours plays something simpler, just a scale, gently up and down, like it's practicing for something grand it never gets to perform. You smile at that. The Victorians didn't have sound machines or streaming sleep playlists. No binaural beats or whale song loops. They had whatever they could make with gears, hands, and imagination, and somehow they believed it could work. You nestle back into the pillow, careful not to muffle the sound completely. It clicks and trills softly, like a music box in a dream, trying not to wake anyone else. Outside, the street is quiet. Inside, a tiny lullaby turns slowly in circles. You close your eyes, not to block the world out, but to better hear the hum of it. The music drifts. You follow. The pillow has gone quiet now. The little tune faded a few minutes ago. The spring finally wound down into silence. You don't rewind it. There's a kind of finality in letting it stop, a soft punctuation mark at the end of a very long, very Victorian sentence. You breathe. The air in your room feels gentler, somehow cool, but not cold. Still, but not stale. The scent of lavender has all but vanished. Even the ticking clock, now turned to the wall, feels like it's respecting your need for quiet. And you're still not asleep. But that's okay, because tonight you've tried everything, earnestly, lovingly, desperately perhaps. And in doing so, you've followed the long, peculiar trail of history's gentlest battle, the attempt to sleep with dignity ritual, and occasionally boiled lettuce. You shift slightly, just enough to plump the pillow. You remember something you read, a clipping from a medical newsletter in 1885. It mentioned a curious new occupation, the professional sleeper. Yes, really. These were individuals hired to test beds, to demonstrate proper rest posture, at exhibitions, even to publicly nap in department store windows, to promote sleep aids. It was half marketing, half lunacy. One man reportedly earned a living by lying on various beds for up to 6 hours while passers-by commented on his serenity. Another woman performed staged sleep demonstrations in hat shops, illustrating the restful effects of satin-lined bonnets. You imagine applying for such a job. Applicant is quiet, obedient to blankets, known to breathe attractively in repose. Historians still debate whether these roles were legitimate employment or novelty acts born of Victorian spectacle. Either way, they treated sleep not as private surrender, but as public art. Something to be practiced, performed, maybe even perfected. You try to picture them now, those professional sleepers reclining behind velvet ropes, pretending not to hear the crowds whispering about their breathing patterns. And somehow that image comforts you, because maybe sleep isn't always about slipping away unnoticed. Maybe sometimes it's about letting yourself be seen trying, wrapping yourself in blankets, in odd rituals and letters and lotions and lullabies, and saying I'm doing my best, even if my eyes are still open. You adjust the curtain again, just slightly, letting in a breath of night. Your toes curl once beneath the blanket, then uncurl, Your body remarkably does feel rested, not because you've slept necessarily, but because you've stopped fighting. And that is enough. Now let the night do what it does best: soften everything. Let the edges of your room blur and fold inward like the corners of a well-loved quilt. Let the clock go quiet, the last crumbs of biscuit dissolve into your breath. The scent of lavender retreat gently into your pillow. You've wandered through a world where people whispered to wilted lettuce, steeped thoughts into teacups, wrapped bricks in cloth, and counted chimney pots backward. Not because they were foolish, but because they were tired and because they cared. They weren't perfect, they just tried. And tonight you've tried too. So as your thoughts slow and lengthen like shadows at dusk, let your body do the same. Sink into the mattress, horsehair, and all. Let your mind settle not into sleep just yet, but into readiness, into quiet permission. You're no longer chasing dreams. You're simply making space for them. Let your breath soften. Let your limbs float a little heavier. You've been warmed, wrapped, scented, soothed, and perhaps finally still. And if sleep comes now, it comes not because you forced it, but because you invited it in politely, the way a Victorian might welcome a very punctual guest. Good night.